Hello everyone and welcome back to Another Mother, a faith and parenting podcast by My Spring Harvest with me, Emma Borquaye. I am a mum of two little ones. I've got Ezra who is 4 and Hallie who is 1. And I guess like many of us have experienced, life can be very unpredictable. It's full of ups, downs and curveballs, especially when you've got kids. But like anything, life is better when you do it together. So in season 1, I chatted to 9 incredible people to hear more about their parenting experiences, to learn from them, to share in their wisdom. So now we are back for season 2, where I am continuing to seek answers to my never-ending questions. And we also explore some really interesting topics. So today I am very pleased to be joined by Ben Lindsay.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm going to do my little intro for you now as well. So Ben Lindsay, he is the CEO and founder of Power the Fight, which is a charity tackling violence affecting young people. They create long-term solutions for sustainable change by working with both policymakers and the communities affected. And Ben is also a dad to 3 children. I was going to say 3 young children, but maybe they're not even young children anymore.
They're all under the age of 12.
Okay, so Ben is a dad to 3 children under the age of 12. He also runs about 1 million miles a week. He's an author, writing your second book.
Yep.
Yeah, second book. And you've got a jam-packed schedule.
Yeah.
So I feel like we should get straight into the conversation because quite frankly, you've got places to be.
Well, yeah, but, you know, I want to be here with you right now, Emma. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
So little side question before we start. Are you actually training for a marathon?
No. So what it was, last year, I did 2 half marathons.
Okay.
And I kind of changed my training a little bit. Mainly, I stopped eating rubbish. Okay. So I was like, oh, okay, no sugar. And I just continued it. And I've been trying to, like, beat my times.
Okay.
But the new thing I'm doing is boxing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started boxing, or boxercise, I should say, because I'm not sure I actually want to get in the ring and get my face pummeled. Yeah. But I'm trying to, as you get older, you got to try and work out different ways to make sure
the running is a bit sore on the knees.
Yeah, because I run about 30k a week.
So I guess because you, as an individual, you carry a lot. So you're the founder and CEO of a very, like, ever-growing organisation now. It's like escalated massively over the last few years, and you're also the dad of your household. So is like running or boxing, boxercise, is that part of the way that you stay healthy, like mentally for your family?
Yeah, 100%. So the running side of it, I have to do first thing in the morning. Okay. And that is mainly like a scheduling thing as well, because there's just no time. But it's also my body, I just get tired by about 4 o'clock. I'm just like, I've got nothing. So the morning runs are so important for me. Definitely emotional health, mental health. I started running about, 2011. And then 2012, I did a London Marathon, which I hated. But I was addicted to running. I was like, actually, this is good for my wellbeing, my emotional health, my mental health, and fitness as well. So definitely all those things, it is a benefit, definitely.
So yeah, with all of that and all of your career life and everything being quite busy, how do you balance that with family life? Is it a challenge?
Yeah, it's tricky because like you said in your fantastic intro, I'm a CEO of a charity. I'm an author, just finishing a second book, like a children's or young person's version of my first book. I'm doing a PhD as well. Oh,
wow. What's the PhD in?
So the PhD is looking at the lack of cultural sensitivity in teacher training. Ooh. And how do we help teachers to understand like a hyperlocal context. So if you're a teacher from like Wales, how are you equipped to understand South East London culture? We tend to not really think about that. It tends to like you're a teacher and you're going to train to be a maths teacher, an English teacher, but we don't really think about culture. And I'm looking at how that impacts particularly the flourishing of Black Caribbean children who traditionally are the ones who are more likely to be excluded and don't necessarily do that well in school. And I'm trying to see if there's a correlation between the two. So I'm doing it at Durham University. Wow. So with that, Power the Fight, books, and there's probably about 1 million other things I could mention. It's hard. It's really hard, like, to make sure my children get the best of me and my wife gets the best of me. And I have to be really deliberate. So, for example, it's rare that I will do anything on a Saturday.
Okay.
And you know what it's like. There's always some type of event or some type of speaking opportunity. But I'm pretty strict with that. I've probably done one Saturday event in the past 4 years.
Okay.
I don't really do it. It'd have to be... you'd have to ask me to do something. That's maybe the only reason why I would do it. But there's a lot of communication which needs to happen with my wife as well, because she is also somebody who works.
Yeah.
So it's not just like me and she just is at home. No, not at all. So she's got a career. So yeah, but we somehow make it work.
Yeah. Because it's hard as well, isn't it? As your kids get older, there's a perception that they need less from you.
Oh.
But then the reality is maybe even like emotionally, they need more from you, or they notice more when you're not there.
Oh, I think so. I think they definitely notice more, because when I'm away in Durham, I can definitely see that my children, and it's nice that they miss me. But I think, to be around, it'll be... So this is the thing, though. There's something about being around, and there's something about being present.
Yeah. So it's not like on your emails.
Yeah, and that's, if I'm honest, I battle with that, because, I've got 2 phones, one for work, one personal, and like the challenge of just putting them down and focusing on my children is probably a challenge most people also have as well.
Yeah.
But being present in the moment. But I think all of them have got different needs. So, my eldest, he plays football on a Sunday, training on a Saturday. So we get a lot of time in the car to catch up and like what's going on and stuff. And then my daughter, she's the type of person who really requires like attention for an activity.
Okay.
So, and she's very creative. So she'd be like, we'll get into a character and she'd be like, come and play with me. And I'm ending up being something, starfish or something. I don't know. It's just like, okay. And then my youngest, who's 5, he's just energy. And, but very talkative and would like to have conversations with you, and also just wants you to play with them. So they're all kind of got slightly different needs.
Yeah.
But being present is the thing which I have to battle.
Yeah, that is tough. And I think especially with your line of work being actually really serious work that you do and really meaningful and very impactful, it's one of those things where it's probably quite hard to switch off from.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah, because I think with you, I've known you for many years, and I know that this is an area that you've been passionate about for a long time before you even started the charity. And it shows now, obviously, that you're even doing a PhD to further learn about, like, contextually things.
The work that we do is literally life or death. And getting to the door at the end of the day and like, okay, I've just maybe had to talk to a parent or engage with young people or have a really deep conversation about policy with like the mayor's team or, that MP, or I know something's kicked off and it's really impacting the community.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now I've got to walk in and, how was your day? And let's talk about football, or let's talk about your school day and not allow that to influence my mood is something I've had to learn. Yeah. Through therapy, through coaching, like business coaches, through kind of pastors. I've had a lot of good people around me who've given me some good advice. From my wife Billy, she there'd be things where she definitely would have noticed in the early days. Unfortunately, we were able to test a lot of this stuff out before children. Yeah. Because I used to work in youth offending services, community safety teams. And I had to be like, gosh, how much do I really want to share with like Billy about my day? Some really horrific stuff. So I've learned not to overshare.
The filter.
The filter. Yeah. That's exactly right, the filter.
So with the like passion that you have for what you do and that you have had for a long time, what was it that made you change it from just being a passion to actually like a fully fledged charity?
Yeah, it's a great question. So 2016, I was a pastor in a local church, quite happy. And then, unfortunately, there was 2 murders in South East London. A young man called Myron, who was killed in New Cross, 2016, in April. And I had known Myron and the family for the best part of, at that point, 17 years. And I knew Myron since he was 1. And so I unfortunately had seen young people lose their lives, but this was probably the closest person to me. I mean, at his funeral, his best friend gave a eulogy, which is weird. I will never get used to 15, 16-year-olds giving eulogies about other young people. And then unfortunately, he lost his life 5 months later in Peckham. So now you've got this like collective trauma, right, of families, community, young people. They both came from the same estate. The same people who were at Myron's funeral was at Leonardo's funeral. It was really bad. They're very popular young people. Both had music careers or about to have music careers. And what made me really switch, I was just like, actually, I've got almost 20 years worth of experience in this area. Yeah. But what is it we could do more to help? And I thought, actually, I think people need training in this area because everyone always says, if I can do anything, and it's like, well, okay, that's great, but what are you actually going to do? Faith groups need training, police need training, school teachers need training, NHS people need to understand this issue better. So that was one thing. And then it was like, okay, families need support. Working very closely with Marlon's family, I realised there wasn't financial support, therapeutic support, understanding the legal kind of maze of what was coming, that wasn't there. So I wanted to be able to not just train people, but give unrestricted money and support to families. Yeah. And then also, I have this phrase where I say that youth violence is never the cause, it's the consequence of something else. Yeah. But most people tend to just look at the knife and be like, well, this young person and that young person, they're the problem because they picked up a knife. But we don't ask the question, why did they pick up the knife? So one of the things I wanted to focus on was emotional health and mental health. So we've worked with over 500 young people in the last 2 years in local schools in South East London. Wow. And doing like what we would call culturally sensitive therapeutic support. And we've seen an 85% increase in young people's well-being. Wow. Which is amazing stats. And and the next bit was also, how do we engage with policy decision makers? So I sit on the Mayor of London's Violence Reduction Unit, Partnership Reference Group. I advise MPs and policymakers. So it's this kind of what we'd call a holistic air and ground engagement, public health approach. Yeah. So
because I think one thing that I've always like really admired about Power the Fight, which definitely comes from you directly, is that you're not a charity that just throws money at an issue because you know that actually this issue isn't going to be solved simply by throwing money at it. Money helps, but actually the connection to the families and the real on the ground work that you do, even to make families feel supported, make them feel seen and known, because so often they get kind of missed in, especially with sensitivity from services like the police or even like ambulance service, NHS. Like it can be quite brutal, I think.
100%. I think we don't appreciate that so many of the things you've just mentioned there in terms of police, the NHS, school teachers, they're under-resourced. Yeah. And the expectation is that actually the police should also be social workers and youth workers. And we've put in police in schools. Now, let the police police. And I've got views on the police, but ultimately let them do their job as opposed to trying to get them to do something else, which they're not. I think the same could be same for teachers. Yeah. The behaviour management side of stuff can overwhelm a teacher when they should be in a position just to be able to teach. Hence the reason why we're saying we need more mentors. But we've got to look at austerity. We've got to look at the fact that £1.4 billion have come off local governments across the country since 2011, and youth services have been hit massively. So if you take 40,000 police officers off the streets, if you strip youth services down, you know there's going to be an effect. And the effect, unfortunately, is that we are seeing an increase in violence, but that is also a lot to do with the poverty that we're dealing with. Yeah,
definitely. It's like it's tricky because it is such a complex issue that maybe when you say, oh yeah, I'm doing this charity Power the Fight, people might be like, oh, what's that going to do? But on a practical level, you're actually doing so much. Hello everyone, I'm just interrupting this episode very quickly, I hope you don't mind, to let you know that Spring Harvest is back for 2025. Now, if you didn't know, Another Mother is a Spring Harvest podcast, and they've got an event every year around Easter time, which is an all-age event, so it is perfect for all the family. It is a week filled with worship and Bible teaching and other on-site activities and brilliant groups for your kids. So bookings for 2025 open on the 12th of June. So I'm letting you know now so that you can get there and check out all the best accommodation options before anyone else. So head over to springharvest.org if you're interested, and we will go back to the episode now. I think like in previous generations, probably emotional mental health for young people wasn't really something that was taken seriously. It's like, you're young, you've got no pressures, like, I'm sure you're fine. Yeah. Whereas now, we're seeing the impacts of school policies and stuff like that. But then, as you mentioned as well, the collective trauma that young people are facing through grieving their friends. Yeah. And I know you said that you've seen, was it an 85% increase in their well-being? Yes. But for young people that aren't able to get that kind of care and support that you're providing, what kind of emotional consequences is it having for them?
That's a really good question. And I think we have to be aware of that. I mean, I remember coming visiting your school back in the day. And
massive.
And I have seen a difference in how, or what young people are absorbing now in comparison to back then. Mm-hmm. So we've got to appreciate that social media, while it isn't the cause, does mean that there's a lot more things which are accessible to young people than it would have been like a few years ago. And the reality is that a lot of young people are been able to see violence and things which where there's no filter in a way we wouldn't have seen like maybe 10, 15 years ago. So for an example, I actually saw this incredible freestyle by like a grime MC, UK rap artist, novelist. And what he was doing in this freestyle was talking about all these different murders which has happened in Brockley in South East London, or not in Brockley, but he lives in Brockley. And there's all these different South East London murders. And he knew like all these different people, and he mentioned maybe like 6 or 7 names. And he's like then saying in his freestyle, I'm on my knees crying because basically I had a connection to all these people. So that's one person. Yeah. So now imagine times that by 20, 30 people in one tutor group who may also know those same people because it's all hyper-localized. So that's one aspect. But okay, now, because of social media, I can see, if I choose to find a page which shows me about the violence which is happening in Birmingham. I don't live in Birmingham, but I now know what's going on the street level. So not only am I dealing with my own trauma, I'm also seeing violence in areas which I'm not meant to really be engaging with. What does that do? It means that a young person is absolutely terrified stepping out of their house. I always use this example. There's one kid, one time I was in a school context, and this young person said, "Yo, big man, are you basically saying to me that when you see somebody who looks like you, who you don't know, but who's wearing the stuff that you're wearing, that you don't think they're carrying a knife?" I was like, no, like, why would I? If anything, I'll be quite polite, maybe even give him a nod or whatever. He said, well, when I see someone who looks like me, who I don't know, I'm assuming that they're a problem. So I'm like, all right, that's one perspective. Let me ask the other 29 people in the class, because, and actually a mix of boys and girls, black and white and Asian. And I said, you've just heard what this young man said. Is this what you all think? Every hand went up and said yes. Wow. So what does that show you? It shows that, people don't necessarily see the best, or young people don't always see the best in people they don't know. There's this fear, there's this anxiety, there's this nervousness, there's a concern. Our young people are scared, they're frightened, they need support, they need an opportunity. And what we've shown with Power to Fight, when you do have culturally sensitive people who take time, who are able to unpack their fears and concerns, we have seen young people who could be excluded, young people who are behaviourally challenged, young people who don't know about emotional regulation switch, and suddenly they are doing much better. What does that tell you? Bring in specialists, bring in people who care, bring in people who are prepared to listen to young people. And this is what this government do not seem to get. Our government at the moment, not that I'm trying to turn this into anything political, but what our government doesn't seem to understand is that this cannot be solved with more police.
Yeah.
This can't be solved with harsher sentences. There is no correlation, because now I'm academic, right? I can say there is no correlation between harsher sentences and a reduction in knife crime.
Wow.
Not one piece of research says that works across the world, but that's what we keep doing.
Yeah. So I reckon like there will be people listening to this who are parents, and I think what we have a tendency to do as parents is to go like, oh my gosh, what about my kids? Yeah. And I think we all have this fear of like, oh, you don't want anything to happen to your kid, of course, and you're meant to be there to protect them. But then when you look at an issue like this, you might feel as a parent like, oh, but my teenager, they're allowed to go on the bus by themselves, they're allowed to travel to and from school. But knowing now more and more how unsafe it can be, what would you say to parents who are worried for their young people, or even parents of young people who have actually experienced loss of their friends?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question, right? Because it's all fun and games until it's your own child who either has to go to school on their own. So, and it's tricky, right? Because I'm a little bit older than you, Emma, but I suspect we were probably from a similar generation where we were able to go and knock on the door of our friends and go to the park and do all that type of stuff, where that's not really happening with my children.
No.
And part of the reason that I imagine is because, the streets are a little bit different. So it's really tricky. So first and foremost, I think there's a responsibility of parents, right? Parents need to be really clued up in understanding youth culture. What are your kids into? So I've had to train myself to understand Fortnite. I don't my kids, my eldest plays Fortnite. So I'm like, right, if I'm going to really know what he's into, I've got to understand this game, and I've got to understand online. I've got to be online safe, So there's things about what are your children into. Talk to your kids. Try and communicate. Try and keep those avenues of communication open. Go on courses. Find out about the Snapchats and the Instagram and the TikTok and all that type of stuff, because you'd be surprised. A lot of parents just close that down and like, well, I'm too old to really engage with that. That's a kid. No. Understand what your kids are doing.
Yeah.
Then it's like, and this is just personal. This is not something which I would say everyone has to listen to, but parent and don't be your brethren to your kid. Like there's times where it's like, oh, my child, it's my best friend. It's like, your kid's got enough friends. Your kid needs a parent. And that sometimes means you're going to have to put boundaries in place. Like it's not a nice word, right? But it's a word that if you want
you've got to be a little bit annoying.
You've got to be annoying. There's got to be times when you just got to be like, we're not having that because we want to keep you safe. But with our children, we always try, and I learned, particularly with my eldest, it's not helpful just to be able to just go to the end of the story and say, this is the thing. No, I'm going to take you through this process and journey of why me and your mum have come to this conclusion, right? So I think there is something about how do you communicate with your kids. I think the other thing is about bringing in, really engaging well with the school. So most schools now will do online safety things, will do parents' evenings to talk about stuff. Most schools, what's very topical at the moment is phones. Should children have phones? How should kids engage with their phones? And I think just bring as many opportunities with the different institutions that the young people are involved in. It's a safeguarding conversation, really. And kids are kids, so they won't automatically think that's fair. They'll just like, you're ruining my fun. I want a phone. No, I don't think it's wise for you to have a phone at the moment. Although, the moment that you are going to school on your own, of course it's wise that you need to have a phone.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a problem that lots of parents, they'll just give their kid a phone and then wonder why they're always on the phone. But you gave them the phone.
Yeah, and we're always on our phones as well.
And we're always on our phones. So that's the
addictive.
problem. It's like, and I like my wife cusses me about this all the time. It's like, Ben, our children are watching how we're moving.
You need to have some screen time
I need
for yourself.
Screen time. And that's a real challenge. And that is something, isn't it? I mean, it's a parent. That's the hardest thing. It's like, oh, wow, I've got to parent myself.
Yeah.
To be a good parent, it's a challenge. So I think there's a few things. So I think, online safety courses, understand the culture of what your children are going. Don't be afraid to get involved. Talk to other parents as well. I think there's strength in numbers at times, because I think that's the other thing. Example, most of my oldest kid, most of his friends have all got like PlayStations and stuff. But it's actually quite helpful to know other people's boundaries. So if, for example, my son, I think during the week he's only really allowed to go on the PlayStation like one day during the week. But it's also helpful for us to know that other children's kind of regime in that, because then we can all be like, but look, so-and-so is not even meant to be on there and he's not on there. So you're doing your homework, you're not missing out. So that communication piece, I think, is really important, which I personally hate because it means I have to be in WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, with the other parents.
So I don't do that. I'm just like, wait, Billy, I'll do the football WhatsApp groups with everything else, but the numerous WhatsApp groups, I can't. But it's important.
Yeah. So basically getting involved.
If we can regulate ourselves in this space,
Yeah.
I think it becomes easier to help our children. Give them the tools.
Yeah.
Don't tell them, this is what you need to do. Actually, this is why it's good. Daddy goes running to declutter his mind from all the foolishness which is around us, even if it's good stuff.
Yeah.
How do you declutter yourself? And my son's got a brilliant tactic now. He makes he does like playlists and very relaxing music, and sometimes I'm just clocking him and he's having a bath and he's got music playing and it's all very chilled, or he's listening to a podcast and stuff.
Getting the DJ gene.
He's getting the DJ gene, but he's also getting the relax. He's actually, I know when I'm stressed and this is how I emotionally regulate and chill.
Wow.
And then my youngest has picked that up and he's now making his own playlist, which is a little bit more energetic, but he's got Paw Patrol and stuff on there, but it's good. I'm like, okay, this is good. You're beginning to see how you can at times detach from the world and just be a little bit chilled.
That's brilliant. And so the book that you're working on at the moment, that was prompted from a conversation with your son, right?
Yes.
Because you wrote a book a few years ago called We Need to Talk About Race, which is about church kind of culture, church life, the black experience in white majority churches. Is that correct?
That's
brilliant. Got it. Done some good research on you.
Yeah,
but then you were chatting to your son and then you were kind of thinking like, how much do I tell him about, like, what's the filter, what's age appropriate for him? Absolutely. So prompted you to do a youth and young adults version.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So he's always been an advanced reader. So I think it was just after lockdown, he was like, I want to read your book. So he would have been like 9 at that point, and he could read it. And I was like, yeah. And I was
like, maybe not.
There's some things in there which I don't know if I necessarily want you to be dwelling on. There are some experiences which your dad has had, which I'm not afraid for you to know, but I also want you to remain in the age of innocence as opposed to the age of experience, to quote William Blake. There's this kind of like, you're going to get there eventually. Let's really guide your steps in how you get to that age of experience. So he was like, yeah, okay, but I want to read it. So I was like, and then he said, but maybe you should make a younger person's version. And I was like, interesting. So I started on this journey and I honestly thought, this would be easy. I'll just like change a couple of words here, change a couple of words
take a
there,
few stories out, add a few stories in.
Exactly, but effectively it's the same book. Because I've actually seen books like that. It's like, the young person's version, and it's literally the same. But when I started reading over it, and with him in my mind and other young people, I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. Or that needs to be unpacked. And it's fascinating when you're going back over your original book. it's not that I disagree with anything I wrote, but it's 4 years on, almost 5 years on actually this year, and the world has changed a bit in 5 years, and it becomes a lot. When I first wrote the book, I was fearless. I don't care how this lands. I don't care if people like it or dislike it. This is what I think needs to be said. Boom. It's really different, right? When it's like my son and daughter are going to read this, so I need to really be specific in what I mean. It changes everything. So I've just done a second draft. It's now with my editor, but the aim is that it comes out for Black History Month.
Amazing.
So we'll see how it goes. But no, yes. I'm looking forward for young people to engage, because if can I be honest?
Yeah,
because I think the reality is, since 2020, since George Floyd was murdered, the game has changed. I think people think racism's been solved. 2024, it's like, oh, what do you mean? Race, it's done. We're on to the next thing. And we know that not to be true. So it's a totally different environment when this book comes out, because I actually think the scrutiny on having the conversation around race and Black Lives Matter and all this type of stuff is harsher and harder now than it would have been in 2018, 2019. Wow. So I'm actually a little bit like apprehensive of how this is going to drop, but we'll see.
Honestly, we appreciate all that you're doing just in the community in the UK. It's making a huge impact, and you're leading the way for so many people to know what action to take specifically with an issue that can be quite hard to know exactly what to do. So yeah, we will definitely send people to check out your charity Power the Fight and find you on Instagram at Power the Fight, and you personally at BCW Lindsay. I think it is still.
If you can just type in Ben Lindsay.
Ben Lindsay, there we go.
You're right.
Oh yeah, you got an OBE now. I forgot to say that. Yeah, you got an OBE.
It was it was unexpected. But there you go.
Amazing. Well, no, thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Emma. Appreciate it, man.
No worries. Thank you so much for listening to Another Mother. Don't forget to subscribe for future episodes, and please do help us spread the word about this podcast. You can share it with your friends, with other parents that you know, other mums, grandparents, or just anyone that you think might enjoy these episodes.